All right, let's get it going, huh? Let's go, gather up. Come on now. All right, fellas, you got to remember your body is like day-old rice. If it ain't warmed up properly, something real bad can happen, yeah?
We'll see. Not promising anything. It's been 3 weeks since we've had one of these overtimes, so.
We forgot what we were doing.
We kind of did, didn't we? Let's see. God, I forget how we start this sucker. Oh, yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to one-on-one. Not one-on-one. All right, scratch that. Repeat it. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Overtime with Coach Blu and Athletic Director Marissa. So good to have you guys here. We've been on a holiday retreat.
Christmas vacation.
Although we didn't go anywhere. We just had lots of stuff to do, right?
Yeah.
But here we are back in the saddle, ready for Season 6 of the Addict to Athlete podcast, which Overtime is a part of. So if you can't stick around for the entirety of the show because your boss is kind of watching you, or you reach your destination if you're driving, come back later this week. It'll be a episode of on our podcast. So
yep,
yeah, so jump on. What a great experience we've had in 2023, wrapping up last year with Project ELF. Again, can't thank you all enough for all the donations and support and everything that you've done for us this year. We are well on our journey in 2024 with the Erase and Replace project. Tonight, we get to hear from a really amazing individual. It's going to be helping coach with Lisa Smith-Batchin and myself. Marshall Ulrich is going to be our speaker tonight, and he's going to be live in the group, and so can't wait to hear from him.
Yeah, I'm excited. If you are registered for our Erase and Replace project for the month of January, starting new healthy habits, Marshall's going to be a phenomenal speaker tonight for our weekly meeting.
Absolutely. So if you are on the Erase and Replace project, brace yourself for some good, just meaty content, I guess, right?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Hey, as always, we want to give a special shout out and thanks to our support through the Patreon program. All of you who donate to the Patreon efforts, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We are designing a new shirt for you, and it's going to be awesome as usual. This is our third year and our third shirt.
Yeah.
So if you have the original shirt, congratulations. So there's several of you that have been through all 3 years now.
Yes.
We couldn't do this without you. Your podcast donations help push this out further. We get to be on a lot of different platforms, the equipment, the bandwidth, everything that you put into the Patreon program goes back into the podcast. And we're so thankful for all that you guys do. Do you have a list of these champions, these lovely folks, so that we can give them the praise they deserve?
Yes. We want to start with thanking our super fans, Karen Hardy, Steve Riggs, Jerem Thurston, Tara Butson, Holly Davies, Scott Foster, Chris Williams, Sensei KP Brown, Patrick Forsyth, Brock Ellerman, Christy Case, Kel Lim, Faith Davis, and Andrew Baird. Thank you to our super fans.
Yeah.
And we want to thank our rookie level, Earl Dyer, Wendell Wood, Brad Waldron, Ron and Dee Loesch, and Sione and Mary Inuk. And the pro level, Justin Robbins, Gary Thurston, and Florelena Grant.
Love them.
And then our champion level, Shad and Freya Robison. We couldn't do what we do without you. Thank you so much. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon, there is a tier that's probably meant for you. It starts at $2 a month, and you can also prepay for the year with a discount. Please check out patreon.com/addictoathlete.
Absolutely. I saw that Shad and Freya actually posted a list of races that they're going to need some assistance with. And
yeah,
man, I'm hoping that they choose me to help them with the Vegas run down there. We'll be down there anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And at least last I saw, they don't have pushers for their girls for every race.
Well, let's go.
I think most of those are listed on our Addict Athlete home base page if you're interested.
Maybe we can bump that up and maybe pin it so you guys can go on there and check it out. I'll tell you, there's nothing more amazing. And I get to push her for the Beaver. I know that's that's got to be one of mine.
I don't
right?
know.
I didn't
even.
Shad and Freya, I mean, Beaver Marathon. Come on. Half marathon.
Yes.
That's what we want. So yeah, let's keep going. But you guys, if you've never had an opportunity to push one of the Robinson kids, oh my gosh, step up. You'll love it. It really does give you this extra spunk in your step, and I'm telling you, you get pushed by all the angels alongside. So
yeah.
Anywho, jump on there. Thank you all so much for contributing to the Patreon program. Marissa, we got some neat things on the horizon. I want you guys to all please stay connected to the webpage, addicttoathlete.org. It's like your one-stop shop for everything addict to athlete.
Yeah.
From our backlog podcasts, blogs, information about recovery, some neat things. We're going to be having our own platform for our educational pieces and portions. We got one of our young employees that's kind of importing everything from our sober coach training program onto our own hosting site with David Matthews. And
virtual classroom
Mhm.
that hopefully we will be adding to. Currently, we just have our recovery coach program, but we're going to be adding some individual playbook stuff for people who are maybe distanced and don't have a chapter of Addict to Athlete close to them, but want to work on their recovery.
Yeah, and this playbook that we've been putting together, it's been 12 years in the making. And as I was writing the second portion of the playbook, you're like, dude, why are you redeveloping the wheel here? And I forgot about all the golden gems that we've already got out there. So it's going to be an epic little playbook for your recovery. So no matter where you are in the state, in the country, in the world, you can be part of Team Addict to Athlete. I mean, now with technology, you know, we are connected in so many different ways. You don't need to be sitting here riding the pine in the home base. You can do it from home.
Yeah.
And have the same support. So keep your eye on the webpage for all of that.
Yeah, we're excited.
Some cool stuff on the horizon. Nonetheless, jumping into 2024, closing 2023. What a intense year. We've got a lot that we've been part of, and we got so much more that's coming. We're turning our attention now to the Lake to Lake Relay, which is going to be epic, right?
Yes.
So the Lake to Lake Relay, it was kind of a cool thing. And what we discovered early on in the inception of Addict to Athlete was it wasn't just the adults coming to our meetings. For the first time that I can remember, people that started to invest themselves in Addict to Athlete started bringing their kids. And when we first started, that was one of the most amazing things was that they trusted us enough to have a safe environment to start bringing their kids. And that's what we started kind of drilling down on what we call the home team. And the home team is kind of like your nuclear family. It's the people, the kids, the parents, the guardians, everything there at your home, where you create your home court advantage. And when people started bringing their kids, because our meetings were structured as such that they were positive, we focused on outcomes and not past. We don't use like foul language, and we really do try to motivate and inspire. People started bringing their kids.
Clean and safe environment where people felt safe enough to bring their kids, because there were so many other responsibilities they're dealing with. To like find another babysitter or leave the kids at home again was just like one more thing that we didn't want that to be a barrier for them to be able to work on their recovery. So we welcome kids to come to any of our meetings, and we make sure that the topics are healthy and safe and welcoming to all.
And it was one of those things where, to me, it's like a badge of honor when someone trusts you enough to bring those that are the most precious, to in their lives to meet you.
Yeah.
And so with the creation of the Addict to Athlete minor league program, the Lake to Lake Relay became kind of the Super Bowl of the year. And we've worked with St. George Recreational Department down there with Aaron, right?
Yep.
And it was kind of a funny thing. We first asked, hey, we want to bring our kids down to create a relay team. What if we had the kids register, but we had an adult run with them? Yeah. And they were really, I guess, like partial to that. They welcomed us with open arms, and we had some great experiences.
Yeah, and since then, now they have a whole sign up. You can sign up as a kids 18 and under relay team. And there's been multiple other teams every year going down that are youth, all because we were able to start that with our minor league, running with their parents or guardians or whatever to get them out and, active and working on that with their family.
Yeah. A couple months ago when I was speaking to the Foster Cares of Utah, their association, I bumped into a guy that had ran beside us many times during that and had actually created his own foster kid team. And it was kind of a cool thing to see that, we got to pave that way, but it's happening again. And we got some great, I guess, stuff happening in that world. So, pay particular attention. If you want to come down and run with us, if you want to come support, come check it out. We got some teams that we're putting together, but it's going to be a great experience for parents and families to kind of heal through every stride and be able to create this training plan for you and your family. And even if you can't, because you're not around, we'd love to send you some of our material to help you guys train together, even if it's just something you want to do with your kid. Nothing better than to sign up for a 5K, 10K with your kid and go out there and train and run together.
Oh, for sure.
Don't you think?
It's awesome. And we're excited to finally do it. COVID kind of slowed everyone down, and we haven't gone down and done this together for a couple years. So we're excited to kick it off again and do the Lake to Lake relay.
Absolutely. So Marissa, the topic today that I remember we were going to want to talk about, it's a funny thing, and tongue in cheek here when it comes to criticizing or pointing out issues and problematic situations that happen in the therapeutic community and world. But you and I have been particularly invested in a certain case with a therapist and a parent that was from our neighborhood that got themselves in some hot water because there was child abuse allegations that have now been substantiated and has resulted in both the mother of a family being charged with child abuse and the therapist being charged with child abuse.
Yeah, felony counts, and they both have pled guilty to, four of the six.
So we're talking about the Ruby Frankie and Jody Hildebrandt case,
Yes.
and the Frankies are kind of in our neighborhood, so to speak, just a few houses down and across one of the main streets over there, and our daughter's been to their home and all these kind of things, and I remember when Savannah would come back and tell us a few things, she's like, man, this is kind of intense, and I feel bad for these kids and stuff, and to the kids, it was kind of normal life because that's what they experienced. But when we had our daughter in there, she's like, "Ooh, it's kind of intense, right?"
Yeah. Well, and I don't think she never saw any of it,
but
she just
felt the
there
vibe.
was something different. Some of the things that were said were off and weird to her, and so she'd come home and talk to us about it. One of the first ones being that Ruby was saying and telling everyone that she was a therapist, and so some of the things that I guess the philosophy in their home, Savannah would come home and be like,
What do you think of this?
What do you think of this? And I'm like,
there's no way that it's a therapist. Yeah.
She's not a therapist. So I even, Utah has licensing, Division of Occupational and Professional Licensing. And so I looked her up and I'm like, no, she's not a therapist, which changes some things.
I think she self-described her through, I guess, her online efforts as a mental health, physical coach or something. I don't know, something strange like that, like a coach.
One of the life coaches.
Yeah, which is interesting in and of itself. But the thing that really bothered me as I started listening to this case, having some insight just from a personal perspective, very small, mind you, but also as a professional, it makes me incredibly upset that the Hildebrandt character, who was licensed as a therapist, got away with what she got away with, because there are real principles that you have to abide by when you're giving counsel or therapy to someone. And, listening to some of her practices, it damn right disturbing. Yeah. Things that they would do to try to, submit their dominance of power over their children, and some of the stuff that they got themselves in. And so today I wanted to chat a little bit about how can you tell if you are getting, counsel that is beneficial or counterproductive. Yeah. Because there's no doubt in my mind, and this kind of sucks, but in a strange, weird way, that Hildebrandt character had to have believed in what she was teaching and thought that that was a true principle in the realm of trying to assist people. But once you start doing things that cause physical pain, threats, and violence...
Well, even just the concept...
Where they have a line drawn there.
Some of that control and power, I think that's where it all started, because I believe in what I've heard and understood is that it kind of grew and escalated. And in fact, they say that some of the extreme physical abuse didn't even start until May, and then they were arrested August 31st. So they're saying it's only within a few months. I'm guessing it's probably a little longer than that. But yeah, I'm sure it probably grew and escalated, mostly as kids started pushing back, because if you think you can control your kids, or, I don't understand anyone after, kid potty training years parents thinking they can control their kid.
Well, let's dive into that for a second, because this is the one thing. If you're in a situation by which you truly believe that the only way to get adherence to whatever rules you're setting is through control, parents, you will lose. You will lose. You may have some small victories in the middle that you think, but ultimately you will lose. And control is kind of a funny thing. And I remember hearing this from one of my professors years ago, and I've always stuck with it. And he said, true control doesn't exist. It's a ghost. And he had us discuss this. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Because, wars have been created and established over, control. But he's like, but what does it mean, right? Like to force someone to do something, to dominate someone, right?
Yeah.
But we talked about this last night when we talked about the choice theory, right?
Yeah.
You have a choice to either submit to that or to choose against that.
Yeah.
And so, we talk about Viktor Frankl. And, would you say that he was controlled in the prison camp in Nazi Germany? No. Although he was captive, was he controlled?
Yeah.
But everyone else probably looked at him and thought, well, we're controlling you.
Yeah, the Nazis, that was the whole point of concentration camps. All of Hitler's life was about control, domination, power.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you look at, Viktor Frankl's view of man's search for meaning and understanding that, the real choice we have is our attitude in every given situation, right? And how we look at those situations. And no one has all that control.
No. So if you're trying to control your children, you may have some small perceived victories. You might think that it's working, but ultimately in their head, they're submitting because they're choosing to take the path of least resistance at the time. They will grow up and they will despise you and they will rebel against that if they don't do it in the moment.
Yeah. So it's like you say, you may believe or think that you have control, but where is it that you may lose? You may not lose in that moment. You may not lose in the few years you have children within your home, but in years to come, you're going to lose that relationship with that child. Is that worth it? You're going to lose potential relationships with their spouses, with grandchildren, with their extended family as they move on because of trying to control. In fact, Heath McDougall-Deans just commented and said that he had someone tell him today, quote, "We don't believe in gentle parenting."
Oh my heavens. What does that even mean, right?
I know.
What is gentle parenting? I love that. And when you think about it, listeners, this is a situation, right? A therapeutic relationship is defined by a caring and supportive, non-judgmental creation of a safe environment that often kind of allows them to reduce the stress. The thing about what I've noticed is that there are times when you have some resistance in therapy, and that's okay. And I like it when my clients get upset with me because I'm a safe person for them to be angry at. And I use this a lot. If I can be a safe person for someone to be mad at, because I'm not going to retaliate, I'm not going to threaten, I'm not going to try and control, but I'm going to allow them to feel the measure of what they have inside of them, to stand up for their needs and wants, and express themselves.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it when my children do that same thing to me, where they know that I'm a safe person for them to be mad at. Now, gentle parenting, that's an interesting thing. I think there's a difference between pushover parents and parents that love, out of their inconvenience and serve their families out of their inconvenience.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with trying to dominate and control. And here's the thing. If you get into a pissing match with your kids, they will always win. Period.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that? What do you think I mean by that? Kids will always win. As much as you think, and you're pumping that fist in the air like the dude at the end of the Breakfast Club, like you won, they'll outlast you.
Yeah, I think it's like you say, like we believe maybe we win in that moment or we get the behavior we want. But we've discussed on the show many times the difference between behavior modification and really teaching and nurturing and helping people to change and grow. Mm-hmm. So behavior modification focuses on controlling somebody's behavior by consequence, by, it's very similar to the way the police system works, right? It's if you speed, you get a ticket. So when think back, anytime you've gotten a ticket, is it you learned something and you always and forever drove and followed the rules and laws correctly from therefore out? Probably not. Oftentimes you just get sneakier about it. You're more careful. Maybe you watch for the cops or get a radar detector, and you just find ways to get around to get through to what you want. So yeah, you may not get another ticket. So looking at the, law enforcement stance, they may look like, oh, look, that worked. We created this good, safe driver, when in reality, you just became more sneaky.
Absolutely. And it happens so much, right? Kids will always win because they have the luxury of time.
Yeah.
And you don't. I don't mean that you're going to kill over soon. What I mean by that is that, for instance, there was a situation by which I was working with a teenager years and years and years ago. And the parents were so upset with her behavioral choices, they started shrinking her world and taking things away. They took away the cell phones. They took away the freedom. They're grounded. They took away, the door off the hinges. It was great. It was all these things they were just taken away. And finally, the dad's had taken so much stuff away that he says, if you don't straighten up, I'm selling your horse. And she's like, fine, do it. He's like, fine, I will. And he sold the horse. Yeah. And guess what changed? Nothing. But then the girl became like locked into her own bedroom space, and she wouldn't leave, and she didn't produce like he wanted. And then Dad started feeling guilty. Hey, if I get you the horse back, will you? No. The relationship now is dead. Does that make sense? You really pushed it. Now, what really could have happened? How could you change this if you just said, hey, I'm noticing a few things. I'm kind of curious if you are noticing these things. Help me understand what's going on. What if you had a conversation with your kid? What if you parented out of inconvenience? And this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. If you guys are listening to this and you think, if I can have a conversation like that right now tonight with my kids, everything's going to be well, it's going to take months, if not years, if you're in a situation by which your relationship's already stressed.
Yeah, you've got to, that search talk, like you're saying, find out what's really going on. How can you really help the child rather than try to push, coerce, or force the child,
Yeah.
Years ago, I did a lot of equine therapy, and that's a lot of what that does. One of the tasks and challenges we did with at-risk youth was having them, they needed to guide somehow without touching, without whipping, without getting on top of the horse, guide a horse through a certain kind of obstacle. And, you think that getting behind the horse, what happens if you get behind a horse and you start pushing, even not physically touching, where they become threatened? What happens?
Yeah.
They kick. You cannot really get behind a horse and push. The best way to do it is by leading. It's by getting in front of them and encouraging them.
What's funny about that is I remember when we were doing this over there at that place, where you and I met.
Yeah.
And one of our department heads took us out there to do a little challenge like this to help us understand how to work with the youth we had. And they put 2 cinder blocks and a wooden post,
Yeah.
And he set it up like a jump, and it really wasn't a jump. It was maybe a foot off the ground.
Yeah.
And he says, I want you guys to get this horse to walk over this, step over this, but you can't touch the horse. Mm-hmm. And he put this thing in the middle of the arena, and they're like, go. And so I'm over there sitting by whistling for it. Come here, horsey, horsey. The horse is just like, whatever, man. And we go over there and like you said, try to make it follow you. Come on. And you guys, we were there for probably about 45 minutes until finally one of these individuals said, well, can we touch the jump thing? And he's like, yeah. And then him and another guy picked it up, walked it over to the horse, put it in front of the horse. Like we brought that obstacle to the horse.
Yeah.
And instinctively the horse walked over it.
Mm-hmm.
We sat there for 45 minutes trying to convince this horse to budge. And it was like, you're dumb. But when we brought it to the horse, it knew what to do. It's like, I don't want this here. And it walked over it.
Yeah.
That is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I've seen it that, this task solved many different ways. But again, it's not somebody that usually, had you even worked with that horse?
No.
Did the horse know you?
No.
No. So oftentimes it's utilizing the person that knows the horse the best, that the horse knows the best, and that usually that person can get the horse to walk, follow, do just about anything. Why? Because that person has built a relationship with the horse. And that's what it comes down to, right?
It does. And it's funny because like you can think like, well, I want that horse to just do it because it was told. It's not going to. It's the same relationship you have with your kids. So as I listen to some of this Jody Hildebrandt garbage, punishing, hurting these children, like hurting them, splitting families, isolating husbands from wives.
Yeah.
It's hard to wrap my head around someone would do something like that so sinister to break a family. It blows my mind. I don't know what planet she's orbiting, but it's certainly not this one.
Mostly because they came to her and many, many others, sadly, over the years, hundreds of others, because she was the trained professional. She was the licensed professional looking to her for the advice, the understanding, and following that. So yes, do I believe Ruby was wrong? Absolutely. She was wrong before I think she even met Jody in some of the videos I saw. But that, where they look to Jody as a therapist, as a professional, as someone who's educated for guidance, and it even turns worse to be becoming more abusive, that's just horrendous. It's horrendous.
It's a hard thing to wrap your head around because, everyone's goal in that arena should be to create an inner strength within the family system, to be able to utilize, the positives and the negatives to come with understanding, not to divide and attempt to conquer. It makes no sense. Like there's no way that balance could ever, be created. And so when I look at this, I think as a role of a therapist, if your therapist is trying to convince you to do something that doesn't quite feel right, take a second look at that, right? Like we're not supposed to tell you you should or shouldn't stay married or get divorced. That's up to you. Yeah. We can help you process the positives and the negatives of those decisions. We can help support you with whatever decision you do make, but that's not our job. We can't do that. That's not appropriate. Certainly not appropriate to teach you how to discipline your kids. I mean, it's a strange thing that she'd even want to tackle, but I've read numerous cases by which she divided families by segregating them, creating issues that were non-issues. And I think, for what value? Like that's pretty dang sinister.
Yeah.
And the sucky thing about it is the people that don't understand that really truly believe in her because she has a degree on the wall, they're not going to know any different. So, what I've noticed is that most people that I've worked with, if not all of them, have this gut instinct. And if something doesn't feel right in your gut, that's an indication that something's amiss.
Maybe question.
Yeah, maybe question a little bit about that kind of stuff. But it raises that question about, when do you know when the therapeutic process and the relationship is hurting or assisting you in your healing process, right?
Question.
If more of them get kind of screwed up and you're creating more fires than you're putting out, that's a gut feeling that something's amiss.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah. Well, and it's difficult because I think oftentimes I've heard of many people finding a therapist who was very understanding and loving and created a safe environment, but so much so that it was just, there was no growth. It just kind of was I
know therapists is like that. They just nurture the relationship, but don't.
Yeah, so it is hard because a real good therapist is going to push you out of your comfort zone. It's going to not feel good to work through whatever it is you're working through, work through relationship issues. But if you're seeing a growth, if you're seeing, something that's intrinsically beneficial, then that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something where, whether it's therapist or teaching you to like any kind of control from the outside in over and over, and there's something that just twists at you inside, slow down
a little bit.
Reassess.
Well, because the goal, I think, for that kind of situation is to help gain insight within yourself, and that's the approach I take. I don't try to solve any of their problems. I want them to gain insight so they can make the best choice and judgment for themselves. And it's a delicate balance. It truly is, all in the same breath. I truly believe that all of us have what it takes inside of us to correct all these things. And sometimes all we need is a place to just vent. Yeah. There were times when I've worked with couples that I thought for sure were going to end in separation that actually got stronger as a result. And some that I thought were strong that kind of said, hey, we're going to part ways, and to each their own. But our job really isn't, and this might sound funny, is not to solve your problems. Mm-hmm. And in fact, you don't want me solving your problems because I have a very unique path in how I solve my own that doesn't work for everyone.
Because of your experience, your past, your understanding. And yeah, everyone's going to be different in how that. And I've always believed, when people have come for counseling, when we owned our own rehab and treatment center, that everyone has the answers inside of them. Mm-hmm. Most of them know what they need to do. They just oftentimes need a safe place to be able to think, grow, assess, learn, and then make those choices and move forward.
Yeah.
So it's nothing about force and demand and coercion and, power and dominance. It's about creating a safe place for each individual to be able to learn and answer their own questions.
Well, think about that. For instance, we had an athlete last night, and she got really involved in one of the questions that we had about, how does making choices now reflect on how you used to in the past? And she got very deep into a situational issue by which she got so comfortable in not making decisions that it was creating all kinds of turbulence and havoc in her life. Mm-hmm. And I love the way that she put this, because even though she had all these great choices, she chose to stay in that negative side because it was familiar. Mm. And all of her friends, all of her associates, whoever, could be pointing out, like, you need to do this. But until she makes the decision to act, or even to stay, it's always 100% up to her.
Yeah.
We can't force anybody to do anything. But I love that when you start making changes within you, sometimes it requires distancing from people that are keeping you in the negative, realm and mindset. And sometimes on the abuse cycle, sometimes it's saying, you know what, this is what I have to own in this relationship. A lot of times what happens that I've noticed with folks that come in and get counseling with me is they end up looking at what they need to change. They may be blaming their partner for certain issues and situations and things.
Yeah.
But it's look in the mirror and what do you bring into this table? And that's not, I love it. I've told you about this before when I had two parents bring in a kid and they're like, you got to fix our kid. He's having a hard time in English and he can't, he's getting bad grades and stuff. And as I was kind of building this relationship with this young man, I could tell the parents were getting super upset because they didn't want to spend money and time for me, like trying to figure out what's going on. They wanted me to say, you're wrong. You need to shape up.
Yeah. But the parents did that at home, and
exactly.
Did that work? No, that's why they brought him to you.
And what happened, I'll never forget this, you guys. It was the craziest thing many years ago. The situation was he was failing in math or in English, and his friends that he was hanging out with, the parents didn't approve of. And they weren't doing anything like drugs or anything yet. Mm-hmm. But when I started to get to know him, I started understanding the fact that he doesn't like English. What he really liked was music. And that they were doing this little after school garage band, and he played the bass guitar, and I'm like, that's cool. And I'm building all this stuff with him. And it came to find out that the kid has significant reading issues. He got embarrassed when he was reading out loud. He's got probably some dyslexia they haven't checked out yet. Yeah. All these other things. And it came all the way around to where he didn't feel like he could ask questions of the teacher. And so the parents are seeing the behaviors of poor grades, crappy friends. But what he's seeing is, I don't like this class. I don't like this teacher. My friends help me escape,
My self-esteem has taken a hit.
Exactly.
Here. Yeah.
And so I'm like, you guys, so we can see the behavior, but if we attack the behavior, right, like the kid's being resistant, does that mean he has to go outside and jump into cactuses and work in the freaking heat until he's sunburnt and blistered and getting scolded for drinking water? What in the world, right?
Yeah.
No, it means that you've got to build the relationship. Relationships before rules. And I'm sorry, you can call that gentle parenting, but I'd rather have a relationship with someone than try to dominate someone. Yeah. Because there's no longevity in that.
Yeah. And like you said, being able to even find out that information about music and the things that he liked in that, you had to just start with hey, tell me about yourself. What are some things you like? It was so far removed from English, not doing his homework, hanging out with friends to be able to like work through to get to the real issue. And that's why it takes so much time.
Yeah.
Which isn't easy.
No.
Like behavior modification gets quick results most of the time. That's why lots of people like it. It's really easy.
But what is it? Some
When
listeners
you
may not
just-
understand what behavior modification
So
is.
behavior modification is just using consequences to create change. It's being able to like put out a consequence so then you get the behavior you want.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that happens relatively quickly for most people because in most cases because they don't want the consequence. So they'll act a certain way. But is that really understanding the issue or the problem? Like you said, being able to focus on what's behind the behavior. It's not the behavior you want changed. You want to know and understand what's behind it. We always talk about this when we talk about addiction, substances, whether it's, alcohol, drugs, pornography, gambling, whatever it is, that is a symptom of the problem. And if you're only worried about stopping the symptoms, you're not going to fix the core problem.
Yeah. So what's the behavior telling you, right? This kid's failing in English and hanging out with friends that you guys may not approve of. But what is the behavior telling you? There's something amiss. You've got to do a little bit of investigating to find out why. If they would have spent some time building on the relationship before applying these rules, amazing things could have happened. Relationships before rules is hard for people to wrap their head around because they think that means that the kid gets to walk all over them. Yeah. As long as I have a good relationship, it doesn't matter what my kid does. This is the mindset with the parent says, if you're going to be drinking alcohol, I'd rather you do it here. No alcohol, right?
Yeah.
But if you're setting that rule now, guess what? You're too late. This is stuff that should have happened when they started coming online. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is what makes it hard is a lot of times we've neglected this stuff, and then all of a sudden we see something we don't like, and we try to create a rule. And rule stacking will get you nowhere. What I mean by that is, let's say the kid comes in and, comes in and grabs a little snack before dinner, and you're like, the rule is no snacks before dinner, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're like, okay, but then a rule stacking is, maybe he comes and makes like a chocolate milk, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not an eating snack, but it's a drinking snack. And so now you start stacking a rule. There's no chocolate milk before this either. Yeah. And you keep stacking these rules pretty much to where it's like, there's no water before milk. And you keep stacking these rules. You're creating them on the spot. Mm-hmm. You can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like
with not a deep meaning or understanding.
Absolutely. I've seen this in treatment programs I've worked at with youth, they'd have like these ink gel pens or something, and the kids would break them open and try to tattoo themselves with it. So all of a sudden, like, no more ink pens, right?
Yeah.
But then guess what they'd do? They'd use the big pens. Okay, now no big pens. Now we're only using pencils. It's like they keep rule stacking.
Yeah.
And guess what happens? You got to keep one up and then one up, and pretty soon you have a city phone book back in the olden days. For all you guys that might know what this is, full of rules that there's no way you're going to be able to uphold. It's like the stupidity in these rules we have now. Like it's illegal to tie a horse to an airplane, because they passed a law in Utah in like 1901 when airplanes first started. It's like, that's on the books, right? Yeah. But it's like, does anyone follow that rule? I mean, who the crap does that? Does that make sense?
Was that really
we rule stack, yeah. And so, this kid's out there working with Hildebrandt down there pulling her cactuses and whatever in the scorching sun. The rule is no water. So he sneaks water, and now there's a rule because he snuck water. Yeah. Now he's going to get punished for that. It's like
longer time outside, so he wants water.
The stupidity in that is beyond me. Yeah. And so, you look at this kind of stuff and you start realizing, okay, so what do we do with it? We've given you guys all this information. Relationships before rules means that you have a relationship so that when you hold a rule, they'll adhere to it. Mm-hmm. And I remember when our kids started maturing enough to have this happen. And it's an interesting thing because they have this relationship with you that you've developed over their 16, 17 years of existence, that when you set a rule, they have the relationship with you so that they respect it.
Yeah.
And this is the other thing. If we're going to tell our kids no, we tell them why.
Yeah, we have a good reason, not just because or because I said so, mm-hmm. or, that there's a deeper explanation as to why you think that may be unsafe or some other scenario. But again, it's like you said, it's because we've slowly built that relationship by dropping the bucket here, dropping the bucket there, and building those, that trust between each other, so that when you do put down a rule, you can say, but remember all the times I let you do A, B, and C? Well, today I need you not to do D.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's look at, we've had some give and take here in the past, and this is where I need,
Yeah.
I need this to be followed.
We had one of our own push that limit to a certain degree. It was kind of awesome. It was hard times, but she was 16, living like she's 28, and it's like no. And I remember one time saying, "Look, it doesn't matter if we say no to you now because we have some problem with this. You're going to do it anyway."
Yeah,
and that sucks. That means that you don't really. I think I said this. You won't allow us to be parents.
Yeah.
And I remember that really hitting with her. And she started to slow down a little bit. And even this last couple months where you're like, you're never here.
Yeah.
You need to slow down. No, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And she'd lose her head. And repetitively saying, you need to slow down. Yeah. If you're doing this, then you're going to, I would love for you to help do that.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely she's come around to that where she's like, I get it. Yeah. I'm slowing down.
Well, and
it took some heartbreak and heartburn.
She's burned herself out and burned herself at both ends and ended up sick.
Which is what kind of a consequence?
Stressed out. A natural consequence.
Say it again.
Natural consequence.
Those are the
best. The natural consequences that come, not a fabricated one that you made up to force
creative consequence. Yeah.
To do what you want. But naturally, then it's talking about, hey, I bet you're stressed out and you're overly emotional because, look, you were trying to do this and then you had this class and then you had this homework, but then you were still hanging out with your friends and now you're just worn. Remember when we had talked, a few weeks ago about you slowing down a little bit? What do you think would have happened if you had done that a few weeks ago?
Yep. And naturally, she's now seeing the benefit of that too.
Yeah.
So the reason why we want to bring this up is just new year, new you. If you're coming into counseling, if you're coming into therapy, if you're trying to reestablish your foothold in your family relationships, be mindful of the do's and don'ts. Control is bad existence when you're trying to rebuild your family system. Relationships develop through search talk, which is open-ended questions, helping you understand, letting them be the teachers and you reflectively listening to what they're saying.
Yeah.
Doing your best to avoid the confrontation by reactively listening to them. And, if you pursue counseling or therapy, do your homework. You're not going to, in fact, I just saw that someone reposted a video I did a couple years ago on choosing a therapist.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend jumping on there and reviewing that video.
You post. Yeah. And I think it also starts, if you haven't taken a lot of that time to build a relationship, goes back to that equine therapy task that you talked about is sometimes you need to be flexible. So if you don't have a relationship, maybe you need to change the task and the request to something that's a little easier for the child or whoever to do by bringing that task and obstacle closer to them so there's less way for them to stray, right?
Yeah.
And it's just being flexible and changing while you work on that relationship building.
You know what else is awesome? Everything we've talked about with parent-child relationships can also be applied to spouse-to-spouse, partner-to-partner relationships.
Yeah.
Right? It works the same way. So, if you need to go back and re-listen to this now because you're like, oh, wait a minute, I can use these things with my spouse, my partner? Absolutely you can.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this new season as we kick off 2024 with Overtime with Coach Blu and Athletic Director Marissa.
Yes.
Check us out on all of our social media. Jump on the website, addictoathlete.org. And like I said, this will be reposted as a podcast later this week. Man, we're pushing towards 500 episodes. We're getting close.
Yeah, with everything. If you haven't, go back. We've got the minor league podcast with Savannah, our daughter, that's moving up to the major league because she's an adult now.
Man.
Agents of Recovery and Party in the Back. So there's a lot of different podcasts that all encompass this, and there's a lot to listen to.
Absolutely. Submit your questions. Jump on here, post a question, jump on our social media, maybe even email us if you need to through the website, and we'll answer your question live on air or get you on the air yourself. So hope this worked for you. Your goal, as always, to turn your mess into your message.